Most people watched the suspension announcement and assumed the silence would hold. Nobody caught what was already building outside the El Capitan Theater before the doors even opened. By 6:30 p.m. on September 23, 2025, the line on Hollywood Boulevard stretched past the point where event lines are supposed to stop. People had arrived 4 hours early. Not the ordinary early of a popular taping, the early of a vigil, the early of people who had driven in from Burbank and Pasadena and Anaheim and places further than that because they needed to be inside the room when a specific thing happened. A woman named Katie, who had attended the show dozens of times, told a reporter standing outside, "Even if I wasn't that big of a fan, I would have been so excited to be here, because this is such a big moment. A victory for free speech and hopefully one of many." She said it before the doors opened, before a single frame of the broadcast had been recorded. She already knew what the night was going to be, the way people know things when the weight of a moment has been building for 6 days, and the room where it resolves is finally within walking distance. What happened inside that theater when Jimmy Kimmel walked out was described by every person who was present as nothing they had experienced before in that building. Not louder, different, thunderous, screaming. If you've ever been to a sports event, that pitch in your ear where you can't hear anything other than that, that's what it was like. A standing ovation that a production assistant who has worked the show since 2019 later said lasted several minutes before Kimmel could speak at all. But to understand what the crowd was erupting for, we have to go back to the night it was taken, September 15th, the El Capitan Theater. Kimmel's monologue. Charlie Kirk has been killed, the conservative activist, the founder of Turning Point USA, shot by a man whose social media history includes photographs at Trump rallies. The nation is inside the specific grief that arrives when a polarizing public figure dies violently, when every statement is read through the lens of allegiance. Kimmel says the MAGA gang is trying to score political points from Kirk's death. He says it with the precision of a man who has spent 20 years doing this at exactly this level. Pointed, timed, grounded in the observable. 2 nights later, FCC Chairman Brendan Carr, on a conservative podcast, speaks. He says Kimmel's comments were really sick. He says Disney has a broadcast license, and that license comes with an obligation to operate in the public interest. He says, in the 4 words that will appear in every legal brief filed over the following weeks, easy way or hard way. Nexstar, which owns 32 ABC affiliates and has a $6.2 billion acquisition sitting pending before Carr's commission, pulls Kimmel's show 36 minutes after the statement. Sinclair follows. ABC announces the show is preempted indefinitely. Trump posts from Windsor Castle at midnight. Great news for America. 6 days, then the line on Hollywood Boulevard, then the doors, then the moment. Rewind to 40 minutes before the cameras go live. The infrastructure of the evening is already in place. Not just the production infrastructure of a television broadcast, but the specific emotional infrastructure that builds in a room when everyone present understands they are about to witness something that will not repeat. A floor director who has worked the show for 9 years walks the perimeter of the theater before the audience is seated and later says he has never, in 9 years, walked a theater that felt like this one felt at 6:45 p.m. on September 23rd. The band is tuning. The cameras are positioned, the desk is set, and somewhere in the building, in the specific quiet of a dressing room before a broadcast that carries this kind of weight, Jimmy Kimmel is reading the index card on which he has written a single sentence. Not the monologue, not the full prepared remarks, just the sentence he will say when the clip finishes playing and the room goes still and the camera is on him, and everything that happened in the 6 preceding days requires exactly one response. The audience files in. They are loud before the warm-up begins. They are the crowd of people who drove across Los Angeles on a Tuesday evening because they needed to be in this specific room when this specific thing happened. A superfan in the 4th row tells the person next to her, "I say Jimmy Kimmel is my Taylor Swift. She has been to dozens of tapings. She has never arrived this early." The warm-up begins. The band plays. The lights come up. The curtain moves. The standing ovation begins before Kimmel clears the curtain. It builds the way things build when they have been held for 6 days. Not gradually, not in the polite increments of a live television audience responding to an entrance, but all at once, at full volume, in the sustained register of people who are not applauding a performance, but releasing something that accumulated during every day the show was dark. Kimmel walks through it slowly. He does not raise his arms. He does not widen his stance or gesture to the audience or perform the reception of ovation. He walks to the desk the way a man walks to a desk when the walk itself is the statement. Measured, deliberate, the walk of someone who has decided that what comes next does not require embellishment. He sits. He looks at the audience for a long moment, saying nothing, the room still standing, the noise still at full volume. His eyes move across the crowd the way eyes move when they are looking for something specific and finding it everywhere they land. Then something crosses his face. Not a smile exactly, but the specific relaxation of a man who has been braced for 6 days and is now, for the first time, in the room where he is supposed to be. The room begins to sit, slowly. Not because it has been cued, because the noise has said what it needed to say, and the room is ready to hear what comes next. Kimmel looks at the camera. "I want to say something that is not a joke," he begins, his voice at a register below his ordinary broadcast voice. Not dramatically lower, but lower in the way that voices are lower when the person speaking is not performing but simply speaking. What happened to this show last week was not about my comments about Charlie Kirk. I believe what I said. I've said it to his supporters directly, and I want to say it again here, to the people who are angry with me. I'm sorry for the pain that those comments caused you. I am not sorry for saying them. The room holds itself very still. But here is what this was actually about, he says. The chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, a man appointed by the sitting president, went on a podcast and told a broadcast network what it could and could not put on the air. He used the words easy way or hard way, and the network complied in 36 minutes. He pauses, long enough for 36 minutes to exist in the room as a number rather than a figure of speech. That is not a regulatory action. There was no formal ruling, no legal proceeding. 4 words on a podcast and a nationally syndicated show was removed from the air. He looks at the camera without blinking. That is anti-American. It is so dangerous. And I want every person watching tonight, including the ones on the Sinclair and Nexstar affiliates that are not airing this broadcast right now, to understand what they are not seeing and why. Fighting back tears, he thanks the comedians who spoke up during the 6 days, Colbert, Fallon, Myers, Oliver, and then says the sentence that the room has been waiting for without knowing it was waiting for it. Perhaps most importantly, I want to thank those who disagree with my show and my beliefs but support my right to express those beliefs regardless. A woman in the center section stands, hands coming together, slow and deliberate, in the way that hands come together when there is no other available response to what has just been said. Then the row around her, then the section behind. The theater rises for the second time in the broadcast, not the explosion of the entrance, but something more considered, more deliberate, the applause of a room that has just heard something it needed to hear expressed in exactly the right terms and is choosing, consciously, to stand for it. Then a door near the stage right curtain opens. She walks out with the particular steadiness of someone who has been building toward this moment for 6 days and has used every one of those days to make certain the sentences are exactly right. A former ABC regulatory Affairs Counsel, 14 years at the network. She left 4 months after the suspension. She was in the meeting, the internal Disney meeting on the evening of September 17th, where the decision to comply with Carr's implicit threat was made. Multiple executives in that meeting, she says, felt Kimmel had not said anything over the line. The decision was not made on the basis of content. It was made on the basis of infrastructure, the $6.2 billion Nexstar acquisition, the Disney broadcast license renewals, the Hulu regulatory matters, the full architecture of pending business that required Brendan Carr's goodwill to proceed. I want to say something plainly, she says, standing very still, her voice entirely level. In that meeting, no one argued that Jimmy had crossed a line. No one said the comments were indefensible. What was said more than once by more than one person, was that we could not afford the hard way. She pauses. That is not a standards decision. That is a hostage situation with paperwork. The room processes the phrase, hostage situation with paperwork. It moves through the theater the way a phrase moves when it has named something precisely that had previously only been felt. Not loud, but deep, the specific resonance of language that has located the exact shape of a thing. A man in the 6th row drops his head forward. A woman near the aisle covers her mouth with both hands. A camera operator on the center dolly keeps her lens on Kimmel's face without pulling back because she has learned in 6 years of working this show that the wide shot is not always where the story lives. A second figure steps out. He is a former Nexstar affiliate director. He was in his regional office on the night of September 17th when the instruction arrived from the corporate level to preempt Kimmel's show. He had worked with the show's producers for 4 years. He had never received an instruction like this one. The instruction arrived, he says, in a single-paragraph email with no explanation. Only a directive and a time, preempt beginning the following evening. He wrote back asking for a rationale. He received 3 words in response, regulatory relationship concerns. He says those 3 words on camera. He says them in the same flat voice in which he received them, because the flatness is the point. The bureaucratic, compressed, bloodless language in which a broadcast is ended. A man is removed from the air, and a president's instruction travels from a federal agency to a corporate board to a regional affiliate to a 3-word email. Regulatory relationship concerns. He looks at the camera. That is the infrastructure of how this happens. 3 words, sent at 11:08 p.m. The show was dark the next night. The room stands for the 3rd time. Not in sections this time, all at once, in the way a room rises when it has heard the full sequence and understands each piece of it and no longer has the capacity to remain seated. The applause is different from the first 2 standing ovations. It is quieter, more sustained. The applause of people who are not celebrating but bearing witness. Standing because the act of standing in a room with cameras is itself a form of record. Kimmel waits. He does not stand, he does not acknowledge the applause with a gesture. He sits at his desk with both hands flat on the surface and waits for it to finish. The show came back, he says when the room is quiet. 6.3 million viewers on television, tens of millions more online. He touches the desk. The infrastructure they used to silence it. The pending applications, the easy way, or the hard way, the 36 minutes, the 3 words at 11:08 p.m. That infrastructure is now part of the public record. Because the cameras were here, the witnesses spoke, and the crowd outside on Hollywood Boulevard arrived 4 hours early. He pauses. That's not silence, that's its opposite. At 2:34 a.m., a network's overnight desk receives an encrypted document, hospital letterhead from a private facility in Basel, Switzerland, matching public registration records. The document references a patient seen under a private alias. The examination dates correspond to a gap in Trump's official public schedule in November 2025, a 5-day period his office described as private family time at an undisclosed location. The network's legal and medical teams spend 3 hours attempting to invalidate the document. They cannot establish forgery. A senior editor authorizes a single-paragraph confirmation of the document's existence. The segment airs at 6 a.m. Within 35 minutes, 5 networks are covering the coverage. Carefully, in the precise language of institutions that understand they are reporting the existence of a document, not its contents, and that the existence alone carries sufficient weight. Trump posts at 7:09 a.m. 8 paragraphs, capital letters in the opening sentence. Witch hunt, total disaster, fake and corrupt arrive in sequence. A legal threat against ABC covers 2 full paragraphs. A personal attack on Kimmel runs 5 sentences and addresses, across those 5 sentences, ratings, talent, Disney stock, the ACLU, and what Trump describes as the most embarrassing return to television in the history of broadcasting, possibly ever. Every paragraph is screenshotted and placed beside the specific clip it responds to. On one side, 3 words at 11:08 p.m., a meeting where no one defended pulling the show on the merits, and a crowd that arrived 4 hours early. On the other, 8 paragraphs, no documents, no dates, no witnesses. The return averaged 6.3 million viewers on broadcast and reached tens of millions more online. Sinclair and Nexstar, the affiliates that didn't air it, produced the only blackout of the night, and the blackout itself became the story, because the people in those markets found the broadcast on streaming and watched it anyway. Because that is what the crowd on Hollywood Boulevard and the millions watching from everywhere the FCC does not reach already understood before the doors opened. Silence, when it is this visible, is not silence. It is the loudest possible argument for the thing it is trying to suppress. Subscribe right now and turn on notifications. The next confrontation is already building, and once you see what's coming, you'll understand why silence is always louder than power.